Hello and welcome to Starts and Grafts. Thank you so much for tuning in. Over the course of the series, I'll be chatting to some extremely creative people, all of whom were hoping that 2020 would be a huge year that would allow them to push on into the next stages of their careers. This is our first episode of the series, and my guest is someone that I knew I wanted to have on from the moment I decided to create the podcast. She's a painter, a poet, songwriter and storyteller, and under normal circumstances can be found playing in some of Greater Manchester's finest venues. Toria Wooff, welcome to Starts and Grafts. Thank you for joining us.
What an introduction.
Thank you so much for joining. How are you doing?
Not bad. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Like I was saying just then in the introduction, I knew that I wanted you to take part in the podcast. I knew that I wanted to start with you actually as my first episode, because I feel like I've been really lucky in the sense that we've been friends for quite a while now. And I feel like I've been able to watch your kind of musical journey and kind of follow you really closely as an artist over the last few years, and seeing you perform in so many amazing live performances that it just felt natural to have you as a starting point.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you've been there since the dire pub situation, so that's special.
We'll reflect on those, I think, a little bit later. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. So obviously we've just entered a second national lockdown. How's that got you feeling?
It's kind of divided, really. I'm a bit disheartened about certain things, but it was kind of expected, so I feel more prepared for it this time. I've got things that I can do now in a lockdown, which when the first lockdown came around, everything that I'd planned was sort of not remote. So now I have more remote projects that I can take on.
I think that's a nice thing. I think a lot of us are a lot more prepared. I mean, we're obviously speaking and recording the podcast, but I can see you on the Wonder Witch's Zoom, and you've got a lovely little home studio set up in the background going on there. I'm well impressed.
Thank you. This is the one and the only Slow Flower studio, so I'm going to plug that a little bit.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's chat about that in a bit. So let's go back to the core of the podcast. 2019 was quite an important year for you. You just released your EP Badlands, which everybody needs to check out. I think it's on Spotify and all the other streaming platforms. What was the process like behind making that EP?
It was really exciting. I know that's probably like a silly thing to say, but I was working with James Wyatt from Slow Flower Studio. So he just opened his studio and was very kind of new to that. I'd recorded an EP before, but this was the first like professionally recorded EP that I'd done. So we kind of did it in a way that he was learning and I was getting a lot of free stuff out of that. So that was like a nice balance. So it was kind of long.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because I'm really interested. I think I read this about you somewhere I know you as well, but this idea of you being a painter, a poet, a songwriter and a storyteller, and it really adds another dimension to what you do. To me, it conjures this idea of kind of crafting something and taking time to put things together. So I was just wondering, it must take you quite a long time to carefully write and piece together the songs that you use for the EP.
Yeah, well, these songs that I used for this EP, I'd had two of them for a really, really long time. They were probably like two of the first songs I'd ever written. So they were kind of reimagined into this kind of Badlands scenario, like, you know, desert winds and things like that. So that
I was going to say, where's the name come from?
Well, it was actually a pot of ink that I had when I was working in a tattoo studio that it was called Badlands, and I thought it was the coolest, like it was the coolest colour. It was like an orangey mauvey, like just the coolest colour ever. And I was like, I'll note that down. Like tying into what I was saying, like it's all, to me, all those songs had the same vibe and the same colour, which was that kind of orangey, browny, deserty colour. And that probably sounds like I'm rambling shit, but like
I can kind of get that. And obviously, knowing you, art is so important to you. You're such a keen artist. Are you saying that you viewed a lot of the songs in terms of colour?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have synesthesia, so a lot of things I do see as sort of scenes and as colours. And I think that was what was really special about working with James, was that he just completely understood where I was going with stuff. So we'd sit down, we'd have this song, and I'd essentially just describe like a mood board to him. I'd be like, so this is gonna sound like, you know, rust, and I'd paint this like picture for him, like, you know, floorboards and the nails are sticking up and things like that, and he'd just get it and he'd just be able to translate that. And it's the only person I've ever really worked with that has sort of taken on these ramblings and sort of ran with it. So that was really
You're almost painting out your ideas then. That's that element. And then the poetry side of things, is that Do you write poetry and then put that to music?
Yeah, essentially. So I always want it to sound more kind of as more authentic and beautiful than this, but I literally just, you're going through your day and I'll find like, I'll have a phrase that, just pops up from somewhere and I'll be like, that's an amazing phrase. So I'll write it down in my notes on my phone. So I have this like notes section of my phone, which is just like disgusting. Like there's like subway orders in there.
Subway
Like it's
orders.
just like a mess.
Poetic
Yeah,
subway
it's just
orders.
awful. But then there's like little things in there that'll just be like, oh, that's a good line. Yeah, it kind of builds from little lines that I
So
pick
from
up.
little everyday things come these incredible songs that we'll get to listen to a little bit later. So before the pandemic presented itself at the start of this year, what had you been up to for 2020? We just talked a little bit about 2019.
It was looking to be a big year.
What did you have lined up?
I was re-releasing the first EP I ever put out, which has been taken down now. So it was essentially a second EP that I was putting out,
Sure.
called Draco. We were gonna have a singles released in, it was like May, June, July, or August, and then November was going to be a third EP. So we just like had all that planned out. Like I was really excited to record it in a really raw and authentic way of booking the band into an open studio space and just recording the whole 4 tracks and then kind of doing the overdubs later and things like that. So it was just going to be full on, but obviously I couldn't do that anymore because,
And is that because you hadn't put that together, or because you couldn't do the kind of gigging side alongside it, which promotes the work as well to a new audience?
No, we'd booked it all in. It was just literally COVID came along and we weren't allowed to be in the same room as each other anymore.
Oh, okay.
So then that got pushed back and we weren't able to actually work on the EP for quite a long time, which pushed everything back. So we're actually working on that same EP right now, which is nice.
So I was going to ask then, how did the first lockdown impact you and what you do? But you've kind of just said that because you weren't able to get together with your band, did it put things to a complete halt?
A complete halt for a number of months. And I think for me, I was quite stubborn in the sense of I wanted that idea. I'd had that idea of recording that way and I wanted that to happen. And then I was like, because obviously we didn't know how long it was going to be. I was like, oh no, we'll just stick it out. We can do some other like admin works, like check out some PR and things like that. Yeah, it was just took a long time. So we finally decided towards the end of lockdown, we're like, we'll do this remotely, and that might be the best case. So that's where we're at now.
So is that what you've been doing at the moment? Are you in the studio at the moment then?
Yeah, so the last couple of weeks, we've been tracking everything because obviously the lockdown had ended. We managed to get a few people in to track some more stuff, and then now we're back to square one, which is nice.
I feel like for so many people, especially people that are creative and work within the arts, 2020 is just not a wasted year in terms of creating and putting things out there, but it's just completely delayed so much progress. Like you said, it was such a big year for you that you'd had lined up, and it feels such a shame that that's all kind of been taken away. Did you feel a real pressure to be creative? I've seen lots of people, there was lots of things on Instagram saying, take lockdown at your own pace. You don't need to be up at 7 in the morning doing that yoga routine or whatever.
Well, it kind of really bugged me at the start of it because I think when lockdown first started, I thought this to myself, but everyone was very, this is going to be great for creatives. People said that to me, like when I was obviously complaining about how this has affected this whole release, essentially. People were like, oh yeah, but you have so much time now, you can write, you can do all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, but that's not what it takes to be creative. You can't just sit in your room and also having the time.
You need those subway orders to keep referencing.
But it's like creativity is such a bitch. Like it'll only come to you when you have the least amount of time. Like, so you have all the time in the world. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to come away with your masterpiece because that's just not how it works. It's just, maybe it does for some people, but I think the majority of us, it's when you're like, on like your last shift at work and like some melody pops into your head and you're like, this is incredible, but you can't like get to your phone to like, or get to a notepad or anything. And that's the beauty of it, isn't it, really? That's why it's so precious.
You need those elements of everyday life to take inspiration from, surely, if your everyday is being stuck in your head. I mean, some people can take inspiration from that and, be in isolation and create some really impressive things based on that. But knowing you as a person, I can't imagine that being the case for you. But having said that, you are such a keen reader, and I know you do take a lot of inspiration from literature.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm interested in. I think Gothic literature mainly. In my opinion, to be an artist, you have to sort of delve into other mediums of artwork to kind of filter through into your own, if that makes sense.
Mm.
I think it's important to inspire yourself, and that's what inspires me.
Because
I
Draco,
think,
which you are re-releasing, I think, is based on.
Yeah, about to release, is based on Dracula. I mean, I always say this before gig. I kind of got outed for that recently. That it's not actually about Dracula.
For doing what?
It's about my shit of an ex.
For doing what? Are the comparisons that can be drawn between the two?
Yeah, there are comparisons. We won't go into that too much, but yeah, that's
Fair enough. But going on from there, but you did manage to do quite a few things. I was keeping track on Instagram of all the things that you were up to during lockdown. You did quite a few live stream gigs. How did you find those?
That was kind of difficult, I think, for me. I think a lot of people did enjoy them. People enjoy live streams, and it's nice to feel like people are listening. But for me, it just didn't really do it. I don't know. I'm a bit awkward. You know, I'd always open the live stream and I'd do that whole thing where I'd be like, "Oh, is this working?" Like, I know it's working. Like, you just
want people to comment and be like, "Yes,
yeah.
Sheila's here from Stockport, listening and having a great time. Thank you." That kind of stuff.
Which is well nice. It's so nice. But then there's awkward, like, you finish a song and then by habit you go, "Thank you." You know,
like,
you want the crowd to be like,
everyone's going nuts in their back gardens at home.
But like, realistically, it's just like you see 4 people watching, and then like it goes to 3, and then it goes to 2.
Yeah, like with any
no.
luck, someone's cast it onto their big screen at home, and they're having a full on live experience.
Yeah, I mean, like the BBC introducing stuff was very good. That was helpful. But other than that, I don't think I didn't really enjoy the whole live stream side of it.
What's the BBC introducing stuff? How did that come up?
I've been doing a lot with BBC introducing. They're very helpful with obviously the uploader and playing some, like, got quite a bit of airplay through them. So they were just looking for people to do like a bit of a live stream. Yeah, and they just got in touch, and I thought, yeah, why not?
So is that because they'd seen your work? I know you're a regular sometimes, or Badlands was definitely the front of a couple of HMV stores in Manchester, wasn't it? Which is really cool.
Yeah. They were just, I think they're just very supportive. They're very lovely. And I was, dropped them a message, and they were like, yeah, let's do this. Let's do some sort of Q&A.
Because surely you've got to latch on to opportunities like that come up. It can open you up to such a wider audience.
Definitely. Yeah, like I said, even them how that worked was we did a live stream, and I did it from my account, but then they shared it onto their page, and that just made like such a huge difference. I think I'd done a live stream like the week before that got about, I think it was like at most 34 viewers. BBC introducing was just so much more like interest.
I think it's such a good opportunity as well, because people have obviously had less things to do. Hopefully more people are trying to scout out new talent and kind of open up what they listen to and kind of find new artists that they can hopefully support. And that's what I hope with this podcast we can do, even if it's just opening a few more people up to actors or singers or artists that they didn't even know existed. I think it's a really nice time to do that, isn't it?
That's really important. It is such an important thing, and the average person, me included, you spend your day and you're busy, and you kind of hope that you'll be listening to all these independent artists, but you just like, you get on the bus, you put on your playlist, it's the same playlist because you've got things on your mind. But now people have got more time, like you said. People can afford to sort of have a scroll through Instagram, and they see someone and they're like, oh, you know what, they seem cool, I've still not listened to that EP that they released, let's put it on. And they can spend time and just actually sit and listen. And it's easier to interact with people, I guess.
I bet you've missed live audiences so much. Did you manage to do any socially distanced gigs, when the rules kind of relaxed a bit?
Well, I was supposed to be doing a headline show in April, but that got cancelled. And then I've had...
Where was that?
At Gulliver's in Manchester.
Cool.
So I've had a support slot supporting Chris Helm that was supposed to happen in, I think it's been pushed back like 3 times now. We're on our 4th try, I think. That's hopefully going to be on the 5th of December, but I feel like it's really difficult to promote those things because
it's just so uncertain. I feel like people are really hesitant to commit to things and buy tickets for things where it's just going to get not inevitably cancelled, but there's that feeling, isn't there, of when are we actually going to be able to see things?
The last time I played was February in Band on the Wall, and that's like, it's weird because obviously I'll play it all the time. There's something so different about playing in front of an audience, obviously, and I suppose it's that in a completely selfish way as well. And I think a lot of artists have struggled with this. Is you don't get that praise, which is, it sounds like it's something that I imagine people don't want to say because it sounds so egotistical, but that is such
that validation
a drive.
almost as well.
Yeah, you get off stage, people, you feel great, and then that's kind of like, people are saying that you sounded great, and you're like, oh right, I actually did sound great. But then, like, you just play it in your bedroom, and you're just like, oh well, the acoustics in here are shit. No one there being like, no, you actually sound all right.
I know you're getting these kind of comments on Facebook, and it almost feels quite 2D when it just comes across as a Facebook comment.
I think a lot of people are watching you just play a set in your bedroom. The fact that is work doesn't come across as well. Obviously, because when you're doing a gig, you've got everything. Like, you've got all your band members there that are putting loads of work in. You've got like all the sound engineers, all the techies. Everything is just and it's so visually, like, to look at. You just know that so much work has gone into this. But when someone's just watching you play in your bedroom, they don't really see that.
I get what you mean in the sense that there's not that ability to imagine you on stage performing with your band and the types of venues that you perform in as well, because the venues you're performing completely add to the atmosphere of the performance that you're putting out there. But yeah, so we're talking about audiences. Well, let's introduce them to one of your songs. Tell us what we're going to listen to.
So this song was the lead single of Badlands. It's called Collision Course. He drops the heaviest heart he could hold. Left me on the bar stool, but burned his fingertips into the wood. But it still burns in my eyes, pure velocity of your love. I call your name forever, but I don't think that you
So that is Collision Course, which, like Tori said, is the lead single of the EP. I think it's got such an atmosphere to it. I personally love when the backing vocals really kick in. It starts to harmonise.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's just, it really gets me going. Frisson, as we learn in our GCSE music, it really gives me that kind of moment of frisson. And I hope our GCSE music teacher, Miss Mulholland's out there listening.
We love you, Mullins.
So tell us a little bit about the song. Not what is the message behind it, but kind of what prompted you to make it and write it.
This song is a song about quitting my job, because I realised that it wasn't what I wanted to do, and it was something that I thought was my dream for the whole of my life. And then I kind of realised that it wasn't anymore. So I quit my job to go to uni to do music, which was at the time was really, really terrifying for me. But now, retrospectively, it was a really exciting movement for me. But yes, that's what the song's about.
So what had you had your eyes set on then as a career for all this time? If it wasn't music, what was it?
I wanted to be a tattoo artist. Yeah.
Yes, you did.
And then I ended up doing an apprenticeship, and I don't know, I kind of fell out of love with. I mean, I was obviously very young, and you have that idea in your head of how things are, and sometimes they just don't live up to your dream, and that's how that was. I just kind of realised during that I wanted to be a musician more than anything.
Yeah, so how come up until that point, music, it wasn't taking a back seat, but how come that wasn't the dream at that time? Was it just because being a tattoo artist was something that you were just so passionate about, or was this sense that music wasn't achievable, just out of interest?
Well, it's weird that you say that, because I always thought that it was because I was so passionate about tattoo art, but I think it was because music just seemed this kind of pipe dream thing. There's no way of making money through it from like how I like saw or anything like that. I mean, when I was younger, I used to paint canvases and sell them, and that was a way of making money. So I knew that there was some form, it was like lucrative somehow. But music just didn't seem achievable at all until I kind of started gigging, and then realised that, this is actually a lot more fun than.
I'm excited
Yeah.
to talk about gigging
Yeah.
a little bit more in a minute, because I was at a lot of those early gigs. But what I'm going to be doing throughout the podcast, I really want to find out about the other jobs and the second jobs and the side hustles that a lot of artists have had to kind of prop up their musical or artistic career. What are some of the other jobs that you've had? I can't really remember.
So we've had, right, are you ready for this? So we've had 15 years of age. I worked in one of those shops where little fish eat your feet. Do you remember those? Gararoofa fish. They have enzymes in their spits, apparently. I used to say that. I don't know how true it is, but
That was your selling
yes,
point.
that was a vibe for a while. And then there was painting and selling canvases for a long time. I used to run open mics, do just gigs, pub gigs, things like that, and function work. But then there was waitressing all the way through that, and pot washing. That was a big one.
You've
Yeah.
always seemed to me like such a grafter. I remember you started gigging at what seemed like such a young age, and you'd always be the person that kind of turned up late to any social events because you'd been gigging beforehand, and you'd always be lugging around. You'd always be lugging around that, I can picture it now, that tripod, really tall, slim PA that you used to have.
That I never knew how to work. I still don't.
But how important was it to you back then to get all these gigs and live performances in front of an audience under your belt?
So important, invaluable, really. I think doing that, it builds your confidence completely, and also in a way that isn't just music based. But for a long time, it was really difficult for me to actually walk up to the person who was putting on the gig and like be like, right, you need to pay me. A lot of times I used to just leave and not get paid because I was like too timid to be like, oh, I've just done like 3 hours work for you, I need to get paid. So that was obviously character building. There are a lot of
That's horrendous, though. That's completely exploiting you as a young girl, and an extremely talented one at that.
Well, it took me a long time to stop taking beer as payment.
It's a long time.
So,
Has
I mean,
lockdown's just changed your opinion on that? After lockdown, no more beer payments.
I mean, to be fair, when I did get paid, I'd probably like put it into the bar. But it took me a while to be like, when people were saying, yeah, you do this for 4 hours and then we'll just give you like a couple of beers or some beer tokens, and I'd be like, what, that doesn't really, that doesn't cut it really.
Some of your earlier gigs that we went to were places where the electricity had cut out and you were playing in just candlelight to like 10 people on a Sunday night.
Oh God,
playing wonderful Stevie Nicks covers and whatnot. But one I remembered earlier today, as I was thinking about what we're going to talk about, I remember when you played the busking stage at Glastonbury.
Oh yeah.
How did that come about again?
I just went and found somewhere. I think I walked through, walking through Healing Fields Thursday morning and just like heard live music and was like, okay, this is exciting. And then realised it was like basically just an open mic stage. So I was like, okay, let's do this.
It was a little banjo shaped stage outside, wasn't it? I think there was like a chalkboard, and if there was spaces, you could go up and write your name down. How long was the set? Can you even remember what you played?
I think there was Harvest Moon by Neil Young, because I loved whapping that one out because, it's a crowd pleaser. I don't remember it. I honestly don't remember at all. But yeah, I remember just loving being able to be like, yeah, I played Glastonbury, guys.
What do you think is going to happen with things like Glastonbury and festivals? Can you see them coming back anytime soon?
I really do hope so. I'm really, really hoping that it doesn't slip into this, online festival business.
It's not the
Not
norm.
that there's anything wrong with that, it's just not the same, and obviously people have to take precautions, and that's understandable, but it is so disheartening not having that, because this year, like I said, was supposed to be kind of a stepping stone to then be able to apply for all these festivals. Kendall Calling was on the
Oh, was it?
yeah, and then it's just one of those things, isn't it?
Because
But
Kendall Calling's it's in Cumbria, isn't it? I think it's quite a big festival for people in the north, and especially emerging talent. Quite a lot of people get their first breaks.
well, yeah, they're very, very, very good with, like you said, emerging talent. I think they have like their unsigned stage and things like that, so they're very supportive. But so without that, that's a huge part of obviously your PR that's just gone, and your own like self promotion. But yeah, I really do hope they can come back, obviously, because me and you love a Glasto.
Can't beat it.
So,
I know I'd definitely be up for quarantining for 2 weeks either side if it meant that I could go to Glastonbury.
oh yeah,
But to be quite honest,
yeah.
I don't know if I should say this, but the lineup this year was pretty old. To have like Paul McCartney, Diana Ross, and is it Steve Tyler from Aerosmith?
Yeah,
all of those people to still be
Yeah,
around
I know, yeah.
in a couple of years.
I was just saying that Paul's got a new album out, so he's got to have a good couple of years in him.
Just to have seen the fireworks during Live and Let Die would have been incredible.
Oh,
We were just talking about your early gigs in pubs and getting started on the gig scene. What advice would you give to anyone out there right now that's 16, 17? They were hoping to start gigging as soon as possible but haven't been able to because of COVID and lockdown.
I would say just keep practicing. I know that's a lame one, but keep practicing. Obviously, the live streams I've just been like absolutely wrecking them, but the live streams are really good. You should keep at that. I don't know. It's so difficult, isn't it? 'Cause it's so disheartening for people who are wanting to get into gigging, and it's just not there. I just wouldn't know what to say to them. It's just difficult. I think just keep practicing and just know that it is gonna return, because we're all so invested in it. All people, well, I mean, the people who are in the creative industry are all invested in the creative industry, at least. So yeah, there's always going to be space for it.
As part of the podcast, we've been gathering advice from other artists that we'll be sharing on social media. I mean, one in particular did say, keep honing your craft, keep working on what you're doing, which I think is key. And that's something that maybe people that were considering getting into gigging could continue to do, and kind of figure out what your set list would be, maybe, and what songs work for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is so important. But obviously, your heart's got to be in it completely. And if you're practicing all the time and you're practicing too much, that can have a massive effect on it. So if you like playing all day and you decide, you get to a point where you're like, oh, this is kind of becoming a chore for me, then take a step back, and there's no shame in that at all. Just you just do what you can.
Yeah, you've still got to do what keeps you ticking outside of music. But this week's artist top tip, should I say, is from an actor and a writer, Chris Thorne. He is currently an associate artist at the Royal Exchange in Manchester. But he said his advice for emerging artists at the moment was just make the work that you want to make and do it truthfully, which I think is such a great way of encouraging people to keep on track and continue doing what they're doing if it appeals to them. How important is it to you to keep writing songs that feel so authentic and natural and truthful?
So important. I think in this day and age, you can really get roped into trying to fit a bill, and it just doesn't work. I mean, it might do. It obviously does for some. If you wanting to be a songwriter, if you want to sell your songs that you're writing, then that's a different story. But if you're someone who wants to write your own songs and really feel it from the heart, you've got to be raw. And I keep saying raw.
That's fine. That can be the buzzword for the episode. That's completely fine.
Toria Wooff, raw.
Isn't that a Katy Perry? Are you doing a cover?
You've got to be authentic, and you've got to put all your heart into what you're writing, or else you'll just fall out in love with it. You'll write something, and then 2 weeks later, you'll be like, "What was that dribble?"
Yeah, and if it doesn't mean anything to you, how can you convey what the song's about in a live performance?
Yeah, exactly. And in the same sense, if you're trying to find people to work with, so say you've got this like shit hot band that you want to collaborate with on this song, you've got to believe in it more than anyone. You've got to be able to sell it. You've got to be like, this is worth working on. So like, let's do this. Because and if you don't fully believe it, there's no way you're going to be able to put all your efforts into it.
Well, I think that's a great piece of not only a great piece of advice from Chris Thorpe, but then a great piece of advice from yourself. So thank you
Thanks.
very much for sharing that. So part of the podcast as well is finding about how people started creating and making music and their journeys so far. What are some of your earliest memories of singing and performing?
I used to write stories when I was very young. That was kind of the first kind of really creative like thing that I was really, really into. I've always kind of wrote poems, and
Mm.
then realised that I could set that to music, because music has just always been like the main thing. But yeah, Atomic Kitten, karaoke machines, that was the vibe. That was everything growing up.
Which one? Which Atomic Kitten were you? Just out of interest. Can you remember? I only
Can't
know
remember
Kerry
the names.
Katana.
There was well, I can't remember the names. There was Lynn, wasn't there?
Not a clue.
Am I
I
making
think
this
you're
up?
making it up. But isn't it really weird that I was thinking about karaoke? I remember my first memory of doing any type of singing was me and my dad doing karaoke in Greece. It's very cute. We used to sing Father and Son. I was about 3. We used to do Cat Stevens' Father and Son.
Oh my
And
god!
he would then get paid for my cute efforts in drinks. The bar staff would buy him drinks because I was doing this beautiful rendition. It was actually child labour, really. Looking back, it was probably quite unethical.
This decision alone.
Oh, don't. You're giving me kind of the Ronan Keating cover vibes there. One of my first memories of you, I was thinking, when can I first remember Tory performing? And it was in a year 7 school assembly when you did a rendition of Barracuda. It was kind of, the setup was an X Factor style audition, and you did Barracuda. Bearing in mind, all the rest of the girls in our year were singing songs like The Boy Does Nothing, which is what the girls at the time were listening to, Alicia Dixon. And you had a catwalk that went in the middle of the whole year group, and you and Rebecca Bolton, who will be featured on the podcast in a couple of weeks, walked up and down this walkway singing Barracuda. Did you have your perm at this point? It was an incredible throwback.
Oh
You
yeah.
did well, and you transported us back 20
Yeah.
something years.
That's when I
It
peaked.
was, but you've always been so keen to continue performing songs that really interest you and stick to your influences.
Yeah, that's why I could never. I mean, that's why I couldn't continue doing function work for too long, because I'd end up doing covers that I like, and people would be like, "Oh, can you not?" I'd be like, "Well," but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that was. Oh, I can't believe you remember that. That's so fun.
I remember that clear as day. And then I remember when you kindly played in the back garden at my 18th
Oh
birthday, you
yeah,
did
Kate Bush.
renditions of songs like Babushka, Kate Bush, which was just incredible. And the neighbours were hanging out their windows trying to kind of listen and hear what was going on. And that's something that I'll definitely always associate with you, is that you've always stuck to your guns and your interest when it's come to performing and creating. So those were the early days. That was uni. Sorry, that was school. You then, like you said, went to study. Was it music at Salford University?
Yeah, the popular music and recording.
How did
Yeah.
that help you grow? What was that experience like?
It helped me grow in a way that I did not expect it to, in the sense that I realised that there was like so much more importance of like networking and things like that. Also, I think there's something very humbling about doing a degree like that. I'm not saying that I ever thought this at all, but you're kind of a big fish in when you're in a small town, and you're going around the pubs and things like that, and people will come and see you. But then when you start when you do a degree and everyone's doing the same thing, it's kind of humbling, because you're like, all right, I've got to actually really work to join my peers on their level, if
Mm,
that makes sense.
sure, but it must be such a nice opportunity as well to be alongside people that you want to be the same level
Oh
as, and
yeah, completely.
not competition,
Yeah,
but kind of this healthy wanting to progress at the same rate as everyone else.
yeah, definitely. And as well, for me, that it was being a female in that kind of situation is always, I wouldn't say difficult. Difficult's the wrong word, but it's just, I think it's just different. I mean, I think there were maybe like 4 or 5 girls on this course that's predominantly male, and that was, in fact, I found it kind of driving for me at
Mm,
first, because I was just like, I can definitely do what these guys are doing. I have like imposter syndrome, like in in every way, in in everything. But it got to a point where I was like, you know what, I can do this as much as they can. So that was good.
Well, you're part of the, let me get this right, the Manchester Women's Songwriters Collective. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah, what does that entail? Tell me a little bit more about that.
So it's run by a woman called Heidi Dewhurst, who is just incredible. She's like a folk songwriter goddess. Like, she's just amazing. And when I first started playing in Manchester, I remember like seeing people doing gigs for them and that being such a milestone for me. So I was really excited about that. And then I met Heidi and she booked me for one of her gigs and I realised that she was just like the loveliest woman in the world. I expected it to be sort of, I don't know, like kind of like a huge. It was a huge deal. What I mean is I expected it to be harder to kind of get into this sort of network, but it
Mm.
was completely invaluable for me that the Manchester Women's Songwriter Collective when I was coming into Manchester, because they were just so helpful, getting gigs and these fundraisers, and they just like back you up. It's just a nice network to have.
It's that ability to share experiences and support each other in what, like you said, is still such a male dominated scene, isn't it? But there's so many incredible up and coming female artists, especially in Manchester where you spend a lot of time performing.
Yeah, and it was just good to have friends when you were starting gigging and things like that. There's nothing more daunting than walking into a gig situation and you're the only girl there and like promoters are like talking to your boyfriend instead of you and you're like, I'm the one with the guitar here, like I'm the one playing.
I'm the talent.
Yeah, listen guys.
Toria Wooff is here now. So as we kind of come to the end of our conversation, each week we'll be giving guests an opportunity to thank some of the people, the places, the organisations that have helped them on their journeys so far. Who, where, and what would you like to shout out?
So one of them actually was the Manchester Women Songwriter
Mm.
Collective. I think that's just such a great
And
network.
where can you find them? Are they on? Is there things about them on Facebook?
Yeah,
And
Facebook, Instagram, and literally like message me about them. I'll put you in touch. Heidi Dewhurst. She's just absolutely wonderful. You can message her with anything. She'll be like, oh my god, yeah, let's sort this out. Yeah, and then Slow Flower Studio and James Wyatt, who I mentioned before, who is my producer. And also has like a small label, which is what I'm a part of. And they're just a really, really lovely, like family run business. Yeah, they've done so much for me the last couple of years.
fantastic. Everyone needs to check them out. Thank you so much for taking the time out to chat. Tell me about what you've been up to. It's been really, really nice. Time has flown by.
I
So
know.
we're going to finish the episode with another one of your tracks. Would you like to introduce that as we sign out for the episode?
Yeah. So this song is, I think it's the third track on the EP. I might be wrong, but it's called Folium.
Down to Suya, and we'll get ourselves straight. She was standing there like a soldier with the devil of a face. Said, do you wanna come with me to the tavern I call my place? She smiled, so I got down on one knee naturally. Let's live out of a suitcase.
That was Toria Wooff with her song For Liam. Thank you very much for listening to this week's episode. It means so much to have your support. Please check out Toria on any streaming platforms or social media. Don't forget to follow us as well at startsandgrafts on Instagram and Twitter for regular podcast updates, artist advice and creative opportunities. I can't wait to see you all again for next week's episode. So until then, take care.